All right, we want to welcome back in our all-star political panel this morning, former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Betsy McCoy. Betsy, nice to see you. The host of Stacey on the Right, back with us, Stacey Washington, Trump campaign senior advisor for strategy, Steve Cortez, and political analyst Mark Halperin. I'm going to direct the very first question at you, Betsy McCoy, but I want you to listen to this soundbite. This is from GOP Congressman Adam Kinzinger on the problems and the current state of the Republican Party. He made these comments yesterday during one of the Sunday shows. Take a listen. I'm being told we're still getting that soundbite right now, but basically the congressman was talking about the disarray in the Republican Party, and then Michigan Congressman Dan Kildee also weighed in. I guess we'll get to that soundbite when we have a minute. We can talk about impeachment if you guys would like. I think that's going to be an issue that we'll be talking about for a while. Betsy, same question. The president finally has two lawyers, David Schoen and Bruce Castor. What do we know about these two attorneys, and why isn't he using any of the attorneys that he used 13 months ago?
Well, the fact is that despite the media's attempt to create a big deal out of this change of attorneys, David Schoen, one of the two attorneys that will be appearing on behalf of the president, has been on the team all along. So there is continuity there. And I think that the major reason these two attorneys are on the job and some of the others left is that the president wanted to address two issues. He's got a slam dunk when it comes to the invalidity of trying a former president before the U.S. Senate. That constitutional issue is clear, and he's lined up his 45 Republican votes to defeat a removal on that basis. But he also wants to address the charges that he was illegitimate somehow in questioning the outcome of the election. And that's very important because the Democrats and the media are trying to tell the American people, convince us, contrary to fact, that we're not allowed to ask whether an election is legitimate, whether the outcome is fair. And in fact, we must do that, especially since Nancy Pelosi and her Democratic team are intent on implanting into national law, federal law, the kinds of tricks they used in the swing states to tilt the scale on behalf of Democrats.
All right, I want to play that soundbite for you, Mark. We'll start with you, get your reaction. Here is Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Take a listen.
Until we push back and say, you know, this is not a Trump first party. This is a country first party. In some cases, you may support Donald Trump in that effort. But in my case, I believe that that's a whole new movement. Until we all kind of stand up and say that, we're going to be kind of chasing our tail here in this situation.
Mark, your thoughts?
Well, look, the two leading figures in the House of Representatives are going to be part of the discussion here in different ways, framing the future of the party and how much Donald Trump is at the center of it. One is Liz Cheney, number 3 Republican in the House, whose leadership is going to be challenged coming up. And then also Marjorie Taylor Greene and the question of whether she'll be punished at all. One very pro-Trump congresswoman, one very anti-Trump congresswoman. And we're going to see their fates are going to tell us a lot about where things stand.
Steve, the whole theme of the president's first 100 days in office is America United. Here is Dan Kildee. He's a congressman from Michigan. Here's a quote that he made over the weekend talking about how difficult it is to work with Republicans. Quote, "I have a hard time interacting with those members right now, especially those that I had a close relationship with. I'm not going to deny the reality that I look at them differently now. They're smaller people to me." I mean, talk about divisive language, Steve.
Right. So much healing. And it's not, by the way, only, congressmen who a lot of folks have never heard of, frankly, backbench House of Representatives members. It's also the president himself. President Biden, let's face it, has issued dozens of incredibly controversial executive orders. Now, that doesn't remotely lend itself to unity. He didn't try to go through the Congress, for example, to institute his radical anti-energy policy or to attack girls' sports. He did it with the stroke of a pen. So he might talk in lofty rhetoric about unity, but his actions, in fact, show quite the opposite.
Stacey, your thoughts?
So I have to point out a recent poll that shows that 25% of the GOP is the Trump base. And then the remaining, I think 17% is, we're talking about out of the parts of America that are Republicans, that's 17% who are more establishment types. So we already control the GOP. The question is, how do we all come together? We don't come together with rhetoric about how people are smaller or less than. We come together when we say we have a party platform that we believe is better for Americans. We have ideas and policies that have worked for Americans for 4 years. President Trump is the head of the party, but he's not the whole thing, and he can't do everything. We have to do it. We're the ones who have to get out the vote. We're the ones who have to go on the TV shows, talk to our friends, and actually mobilize people to come alongside of us by explaining why we believe what we believe. That's what I did when I was on the president's coalitions. That's what I'm still doing now that the campaign is over. It's about talking to people and winning them over, and that kind of rhetoric doesn't do it.
All right, I'm going to play a soundbite for you. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We touched on this a week ago, but she is back at it, calling GOP members of Congress white supremacists. Take a listen.
There are legitimate white supremacist sympathizers that sit at the heart and at the core of the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives.
I want everybody to be able to weigh in on this. Mark, we'll start with you. Democratic socialist, that term was trending on Twitter over the weekend, by the way, as well. Go ahead.
You know, we're going to see if her rhetoric is the rhetoric that dominates or Joe Biden's more soothing rhetoric. I think it's going to be of great concern to people like AOC. Joe Biden's first big meeting with members of Congress is not with Democrats, but with Republicans today at 5 o'clock scheduled at the White House with those senators who want to do a deal with him.
By the way, with that deal, you think anything's going to happen? Can Joe Biden compromise, Betsy McCoy?
I don't think he's going to be willing to compromise because he's not the head of the party. He's simply a puppet of the party. He's being run by the far left, and they don't want to compromise. They have no qualms about pushing this $1.9 trillion bill through using a legislative trick called reconciliation. Both parties, by the way, have used it. But the fact is, there are things in that bill that all Americans should be against, including one that I'd like to point out because of AOC, and that is racial preferences in stimulus aid. There's no reason why a black restaurant owner should be any farther ahead in line than a white restaurant owner in getting aid. They're both suffering. Race should have nothing to do with it.
Stacey, what do you think?
Well, the reason they have to put black business owners up front is because their people, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the majority of the businesses they burned down were in black neighborhoods because it was the inner cities that were hardest hit. There were many black business owners who put signs on their businesses that said black owned, and Antifa and BLM still burned them to the ground. So they're trying to patch together some of the people who supported them the most, sent the most money towards their campaign effort for Biden by giving them first crack at the stimulus funds. But it's totally unconstitutional. It goes right against what Martin Luther King wanted for this country, which is what we're living out right now. Blacks, whites, men, women sitting on TV discussing issues. You have liberals on here. You have everyone from around the globe coming on the show. It represents what we have in America. I'm living in the suburbs. 52% of black Americans live in the suburbs. Give me a break here. What do they think we are? We're their victims. They're permanent victims. And I stand against that. I don't need to first crack at stimulus funds. Let it be an equitable process that respects the Constitution. Point made.
Stacey, yeah, wow, drop the mic, get out of the chair. By the way, Stacey, we love having you on as a panelist. You're doing a great job. I wanted to get your thoughts on Black Lives Matter over the weekend was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And I just want to know what's the threshold for nominating? President Trump was nominated as well. I should say his nomination came before the events of January 6th, but it was for peace and what he's done in the Middle East, the Abraham Accords. But Black Lives Matter, the protest this summer, a conservative estimate from The Guardian says that 9 of those rioters were killed. How do they get nominated for something like this?
Well, and there were 30 people killed overall. Some of them were protesters where statues fell on them. Some of them, you know, it was a really mixed bag. It's a tragedy for us as a country that we can't use our civic processes, that we feel like we have to have these kinds of violent protests to make our points here. But what does the Nobel Peace Prize mean? Well, apparently it means not much. Now, I personally feel that the scientists and the people in the field of STEM, they deserve the Nobel Peace Prize nominations that they received. But this Black Lives Matter, it's a pander. It's a peace offering because Biden hasn't met with them yet. That's what you should watch, is go on Instagram, go on Twitter, and check out the way that Black Lives Matter people are complaining that they've not had a meeting with President Biden. I can tell you I met with President Trump once for an hour and 5 minutes, and I don't lead any coalitions besides Family Vision Media, which is a very small organization out of Missouri. But he sat down with me and other Black leaders across the country because he cared about what we thought. when will Biden sit down with Black Lives Matter? That's the story to watch.
Mark, I got to reel you back in, Mark. I saw the eyes looking off to the clock there a second ago.
No, I wasn't looking at the clock. I was looking at the snow, to tell you the truth.
I know. Is it bad? You're in New York still, right?
I'm in New York, and there's a frozen apple today. So I'm just looking at it to see what time I can take my son sledding.
Steve Cortez, take me sledding. I want to go sledding. I'm stuck in New York today because of the storm. Steve Cortez, 10 seconds. But today is media day in the NFL. They're only going to let 9 players from each team talk and do it over Zoom. How lame.
Yeah, it is lame, but listen, I have to say I'm so excited for this game because it's the generations, right? It's Mahomes against Tom Brady. I'm going to be rooting for my generation, for the old guys.
That's right, Bart Starr. No, yeah, Tom Brady, absolutely. Great panel today. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Thank you very much to all of our panelists. Always a pleasure.